going on, everybody? Maximizing your career on and off the field obviously requires a ton of hard work, dedication, sacrifice, and relentless pursuit of excellence day in and day out. My guest today is returning to the show and embodies all of those things on a daily basis and shows what it means to be fully committed to your craft. It is an absolute honor to welcome back the associate head coach of the Seton Hall Pirates, Giuseppe Papaccio. Giuseppe, what's going on, brother?
How you doing, man? Thanks for the intro. That was
Dude.
awesome. I appreciate it. Thanks for having me here.
Of course, man. It's always an honor to have you. We've talked about it in the past. Dude, your hard work, how dedicated you are to your craft. I brought up the last time you were on the Instagram stuff that you put out. It fires me up. I'm seeing you get up at 2:30, 3 a.m., posting inspirational quotes, hitting stuff, and then you roll out onto the street and you run about 7 or 8 miles right after that at 4 a.m. It's absolutely amazing. It fires me up. Can't
Thank
even
you.
begin to think what it does for your players, dude, which kind of brings me obviously to what we're doing here today, man. I'd love to talk to you about your team, how this last year went, how this year's going to look, the outlook for this year, looking ahead, and then, man, your insight, your mission. Obviously, you're hungry and you have an insanely bright future. You're still young and you're changing the game. I absolutely love that, man. So, like, what's life like for you right now as you guys are kind of rolling into fall, getting into it, man? What's the day-to-day grind?
Yeah. Thank you for all those kind words. I really appreciate that. Right now we're doing individual work, which is like in Division I baseball, you can only have 4 hours of skill work. That's like the baseball stuff per week, and then 4 hours of strength and conditioning. So we're in that until 2 Fridays from now. So like a day like today or like yesterday, we lift in the morning as a group. The position players are in 2 groups, and then we do hitting, depending on the day, hitting, defense, sometimes both. But that's kind of where we're at. We're Monday through Friday right now, and it's been exciting. We've got a bunch of new players. That's kind of the way the landscape goes now. Everybody has half a new team almost every year, so it's been awesome. It's good to get connected with the guys that you recruited the last couple of years, and then some of the guys you get out of the transfer portal. So it's exciting. This is my favorite part of the job, is actually being in the trenches and working with the guys. So developing those relationships has been awesome so far.
Man, I'd love to give a shout out to a partner of mine, the sponsor of today's stream, OTU Baseball Curriculum. So if you check out otubaseball.com, these guys are bringing baseball development and baseball education to wherever you're at. Whether you're a grassroots baseball player just trying to learn the concepts of baseball, or you are you're a talented baseball player that knows everything about the game. You just need to freshen up, brush up on your baseball IQ, man. Taught by professionals, Olympians, that can teach your game, that can elevate your game, teach you the concepts that you think you thought you knew, but you really don't know. These guys can help you out. Check out otubaseball.com. Tell them Ian from the 9 Hole sent you. They'll love that. Moving on to the show. So 18 new players coming in. Not all freshmen, like you said, some coming in from the transfer portal. That is an integral part that influences every lineup, every program. It seems like some things are moving around. There's some uncertainty in the game. Just had Cliff Godwin on here. We talked about it a little bit on air. We touched on this stuff. We touched on the high rate of turnover and maybe these new rosters coming in, the new players coming in, man. What is your take on the transfer portal? Do you think it's good for the game? How do you see this kind of moving forward? And how difficult is it to command a brand new team? It feels like every year.
Yeah, I guess that's part of the challenge, but I guess it challenges your coaching ability to be able to kind of dissect things that went well and things that you believe in and things that you need to fix, and kind of like redo that almost every year, because we talked about it a little bit off air. Like you have a bunch of new guys every year. So it's not like, hey, in September, you can talk to the hitters that are returning and say like, hey, we're doing this from last year. Like that only applies to like 5 or 6 guys out of, right now we have 21 hitters. Like you have to kind of go back to the drawing board and break everything down almost from the beginning for a lot of the guys. So I think it challenges you as a coach. And as a leader, obviously, of whatever group that you coach, the offense, the pitchers, the defense. But the transfer portal as a whole, like there's I don't see huge problems with it because I guess we're a couple years deep in it now, and I've seen some of the players that we got from it this year have been awesome. The players in the past have been awesome, all conference type of players. And then the obvious downside is that sometimes you lose good players, and that's the nature of really anything. It's the nature of the game. It's the nature of life. Sometimes you lose, like you work really hard to recruit a player for sometimes months. Then you get them to say yes, and then sometimes they come for a year, they have a great year, and they think it's greener on the other side, and they go. So that's the part that's hard, and you have to try and keep those guys as best as you can. Sometimes it's a dollar figure, sometimes it's a different logo, sometimes it's a fan base. You never really know what attracts the guys to the other side, but we've honestly, I think, reaped the rewards of the transfer portal more than we've lost. We've gotten some really good players, and part of the recruiting piece that goes into it, at least for the hitters, for us, is like I've recruited some guys out of the transfer portal that I knew from high school. So like I knew like a Max Vieira or an AJ Soldra, who were guys that hit the transfer portal, but I saw them in high school.
Yeah.
Like I knew that, talked to them on the phone in high school. Unfortunately, they told me, some guys said, no, I'm going somewhere else. And then you get them a couple of years later based on that relationship. But we've honestly gotten some really good players, some Danny Melnick type of players, who was a really good player for us last year. And that was a transfer portal grad kid. So I definitely can't complain about the transfer portal. I do believe, I guess, two pieces of it. And maybe this is a little long. You probably didn't know I was going to go this deep on it right now.
I love this. No, please,
long answer,
please.
But I do think, just I guess being a young father, my kid's 3 years old and 1 year old. But if you're a father looking at your kid, if he ends up in the wrong situation, I think it's hard for them to just be like stuck there for 4 years. It's you would hate to see your kid either not like the school, not like the coaching staff, not like the position that he's in. And you don't want him to be miserable, but there's also the side that like you have to go through some adversity sometimes and just have that like figure it out mentality. You know what I mean? So I see both sides, and that's kind of the way it's been the last couple of years at the transfer portal. Is like it's fair that kids can start over and go to a different school and have a better opportunity, but it's also like, back in the day, there was some punishment behind it. If you wanted to leave and break your commitment, then you had to sit a year. So like that, to me, that was like, that's fair. If I'm going to leave, like there should be another side of it. So sometimes it's good, sometimes it's bad, but I definitely see the issue where some mid-majors fall into. Is like you get a really good player out of high school, you develop them for a year or two, and then once he gets really good, it's like, all right, I can go play somewhere else. It's like,
yep.
it's
the leapfrog type thing. So like they're coming to you almost as like a junior college. They're showing out at a mid-major in a legit conference, right? But it's Northeast school. You guys are kind of swimming upstream against bigger conferences that have NIL money and bigger crowds and stuff, right? Like I get it. It's how I feel about it is the exact way that you're saying. I understand there's a ton of opportunity in there. It helps you out if it's not a great situation, your first school that you go to, but man, running from adversity a little bit, being at Wagner College, I said this before, going to the bigger schools that we played, we got our butts kicked by like Virginia Tech, NC State, dude, Hawaii, right? And I'm going to these schools. I'm like, man, it'd be crazy to play here. It'd be wild to play here. I can't transfer, right? You got to sit out. You got a redshirt a year. So I got to put my head back down, grind through the adversity, right? And try to come out the other side, man. So I get exactly what you're saying.
Yeah. It's a crazy piece to it, but I definitely don't want to say I don't like it, because I do think there's strength to getting good players that are just looking for a newer opportunity, because sometimes they're 20 years old and they have a lot of development under their belt already, and they kind of know what it takes to either compete or win at this level, or even just they've had experience at this level. So sometimes those are guys that show up that are older and more developed, and they have like a chip on their shoulder. Like they want to either play more or prove to the other school that they should have played more, whatever it is. It's definitely not like, hey, 100% I don't like it. There's strengths and there's weaknesses, just like anything. But you have to, the way I'm looking at it too, you said in the Northeast, you're kind of swimming upstream sometimes, which is accurate. If you're a really good Northeast team, like your players can usually play at another conference. But the way I'm looking at it is like everybody in our conference is in pretty much the same boat. the UConns, the Xaviers, the St. John's, the Craytons, like their best players and our best players can go somewhere else. But like I have to compete against those schools and do a better job than them at the same game that they're playing. So it's not like, I guess an example, LSU is not in our conference. Tennessee is. It's not like we're playing those guys every weekend. So I guess it's just adapting and trying to survive and get better at what we have to deal with transfer portal and roster turnover and roster cuts and all that stuff. So it is what it is. You just got to adapt or die, I guess.
Absolutely, dude. Absolutely. So the adapt or die theme is prevalent in the Northeast, especially with Northeast grinders, dealing with all different types of adversity that other people may not have to deal with, man. So this last season, 2024, didn't necessarily end the way you guys wanted it to go, right? 24-30 record, man. In your mind, how was the season? How did you guys perform? And how are you measuring success beyond just the win-loss record when you're kind of like breaking it down and looking back on it?
Yeah, it taught us a lot. We talked about that at the end of the year too. For me, it was a super humbling experience. Like we went into the year, we had 4 all-conference returning players, and we had a bunch of older guys that were really successful. So we were in the practices and the weight room and all that stuff. The energy was awesome. Senior leadership was great throughout the fall and the winter. And we just felt good about like, hey, we've got some of the best players in the league, and we feel like we can do this thing. I honestly went into last year like we might be a championship level team here. And then the first probably 20 something games, we kind of played like that. We beat some Mercers and Georgia States, like going out of state and beating schools from a little bit further south with some kind of gritty Northeast wins. And then it was just from conference play and even some midweek games, it was just a roller coaster. And I think part of that, you have to take accountability of that as a coach. I think we could all kind of look back at any season and pick apart different things that we would have done a little bit better, or sometimes a little bit more, a little bit less of. But I think it was just sometimes we were supposed to be so good that when we weren't good, there was a lot of pressure involved in that. Like, hey, if you're a senior, I should be the guy. I shouldn't strike out with a man on second. And then if you do, it's like almost contagious that you feel like, okay, I didn't get the job done. Like that, this loss is my fault. So yep. I felt like I wish I could have stopped that a little bit earlier. I felt like that was kind of like a reoccurring theme because we had so many older guys. It just seemed like there was always a lot of tension to win. You know what I mean? And it was like, no, we couldn't play as free as we should have. And looking back on it, I guess I could have portrayed that message a little bit better. Like, hey, we got to just go out there and do it. We've prepared, yada, yada, yada. We've done this. You guys have had really good careers already. Like, let's just do this. So I'm trying to do a better job of that this year, of keeping it a little bit more singular focus to just like today, who you are as a player today, what do you need to do today to get better? What do you need to do today to win? Instead of like, hey, you guys have been really good for 3 or 4 years of your career. Like you pretty much, you better be good this year. You know what I mean? Like I feel like I never said that, but I felt like some of the vibes could have been like, hey, like, let's get this thing going. You guys are better than this. So looking back on last year, I wish we could have, I guess, like been a little bit more consistent from the first half to the second half. Obviously, swung the bats a little bit better in certain situations. But also like our conference, if you look back on it, if you look at the league standings and the league scores, like week to week, the league plays a ton of 1 and 2 run games every weekend. So it's like St. John's as an example. They won the conference last year, and I don't think they made the conference tournament for like the past 5 years or 5 or 6. Like, and they go right to the top, and then they win a regional game. Like they go to a regional, play really well, win a game. Like it could happen to anybody at any point. So I guess that's the positive, and the negative is like last year doesn't dictate what's going to happen this year in a good way and a bad way. But also if you were good last year, which I think was part of the issue that we ran into, we were good the year before and we kind of just snowballed it and thought it would just transfer over a little bit. Not that we took any foot off the gas or anything, but it was just the feel of like, I need to be good. I am good. I should be, like, almost like over expectation instead of just like playing each day. So another long-winded answer from me, but it was definitely humbling. Like I was like, I never said it to anybody, but like going into the year, I was like, we could be the top of the league here. And it was
100%.
like, we ended up not being that team. So just, I think, kind of sitting on that over the summer and trying to navigate what did we do good, what did we do that could have been better. It's a refreshing start in the fall. I feel like it's like everybody has something to prove each day. And being with a lot of young guys with kind of like an open roster, like there's a lot of spots positionally on the field that could be filled. The competition has been awesome. I think everybody enjoys themselves. Everybody knows that, like, hey, the team that we were last year is not the team that we're Seton Hall tradition is used to. So there's kind of some work to be done, a little bit of chip on the shoulder. So that's good for everybody. I've learned a lot. We all learned a lot from last year, and we're moving forward with just the headlights on for right now, not looking in the rear view as much.
It's perfect, man. I love the long-winded answers, man. That's I'm open. I am asking you open-ended questions, hoping that you take off with it, man. I love that, right?
Thanks.
I love how people are able to, with any type of success or setback or whatever it is, however you deem it, how you're able to break it down, kind of like review it, build a
Yeah.
path forward. So like you were able to take, what 2024 brought to you and Seton Hall, man, and you were able to go out and find some guys to fill some positions. You had mentioned 18 new players, man. So like what was the Seton Hall staff looking for this summer, man? And what were you guys able to find it?
Yeah, we had, so going into last year, we had like all conference shortstop, second base, catcher, center field. Like we had pretty much, which is like what you wanted,
The middle
like
of the
right at the
field.
middle of the field, like all the lead, and they were all fifth year seniors or fourth year seniors. So those guys have graduated since then. We brought in some middle guys. We brought in a center fielder, an outfielder. We brought in another really good catcher. We've built on some of the guys also that are sophomores and juniors now that we're going to count on more. So we haven't, it's not like we looked at like the whole roster as open. We do have some expectations of returning guys like, hey, this guy should be our center fielder. He should be our left fielder. He should be the shortstop. So we didn't have to like go back to the drawing board by any means. We kind of knew those guys were graduating. It's not like they all just transferred. So we had a game plan going into the summer. And I think we did a really good job. We recruited some guys, some Northeast guys that have had really successful careers already, kind of filled in those gaps. And that's kind of the way that our success has been in the transfer portal the last couple of years is getting the Northeast guys from either the tri-state area, somewhere around our region, and getting guys that either know the program a little bit, know me, know Coach Shep, know somebody. And we usually develop that connection. Like I'd say some of our most successful recruiting, I guess, experiences in the transfer portal have been based on prior relationships. There are some guys, there are like 3 guys on our team right now that we just knew them, like I told you, out of high school, and they picked us over some bigger schools because they felt like they can trust us as a staff to develop them. They trust the program, where we've been and where we can go, and it's a fit for some guys. So we developed kind of like, hey, what do we need to fill for next year? Also, we looked at where we missed last year. Like, hey, we need to bring in a player that can do this, a player that can do that. We missed that a little bit last year. So we filled in with some really good transfer portal players that we're excited about. But also part of what we tell them too is we're not a school that goes in the portal and just offers you through email or text. Like we do the visit, we do the phone calls, we do all that stuff, the Zoom. We hold the culture of the program to a really high standard. So we're not really willing to just bring in anybody out of the transfer portal and just like gamble on like, hey man, this dude had a great year at this school, but then you get him in the locker room and he's just a bad egg. You know what I mean? So it's time consuming in the summer, but it's also really rewarding when you get guys that like trust you and guys that think they can fit into the program and the model and the coaching style and all that stuff. So we've had a really good summer. We feel like we're set up for a good fall right now.
Yep, fires me up, man. So you're talking about building up the program, and you're talking about building trust, building these relationships, and man, it's evident to see. Obviously, you're hungry. You're a leader, and you're, for lack of a better
Thanks.
phrase, right? You'll be a head coach one day. At least in my opinion,
Thanks.
you're the type of dude that I'd like to play for in college or in the professional ranks, right? A dude that's hungry, a dude that I can like look up to and strive to be like, holds their players to a standard and lives it as well, right? So, kind of leading from the front side by side with his dudes. So like you are an associate head coach right now. You've been an associate head coach NJIT previously, right? You've had success. Man, so you're obviously going about this one day, maybe with the ambition or the dream of being a head coach one day. That would be that's how I look at it. That's what I see from you. Obviously, man, would love to get your take on that. And how are you able to kind of, balance that ambition with your current responsibilities with the role that you play as the associate head coach? What's that like day to day?
Yeah, I think it's actually funny that we're talking about that, because I've looked at some of the younger coaches that I've worked with, and when I was like a volunteer coach my first couple of years, I heard it was like a business podcast, and they said dress for the job that you want, not the job that you have. And I was like, that makes a lot of sense. Like I'm not going to show up like the volunteer that makes no money and just like can do what he can do. Like I felt like even at the really younger stages of my career, like I just carried myself like, all right, in my head I was like, I'm a full-time coach and this is my responsibility, instead of like, hey, like I'll come to practice when I can. It was like being in the office and doing the things like talking mental game with guys, breaking down video. I wanted to go about it that way and build my, I guess, professional experience off of that, instead of like, hey, one day I hope I get an opportunity. It was like kind of creating that environment now and then getting to that opportunity. And I guess the head coach thing is kind of similar. Like Coach Shep has meant the world to me. I played 4 years for him. He recruited me 2 years in high school. Then I've known him so I've known the guy for 20 years, like probably 18 years. But he has had such an impact on me on just like my coaching style and my leadership style. When I was a freshman, I needed a lot of leadership. Like I was not the guy, I was not the person I am today by any means. And him and a couple of the other coaches on staff, the Jim Duffy and Phil Kandari's, like they led me in the same exact way that I want to lead our players now. Is like they led from the front. If we were doing a long conditioning run, like they were at the front of the pack and they were doing it. They were 40 years old, 40 something, 35 years old. They were running with us 18-year-olds. And that's kind of just the way that I saw it done. And obviously when we were in college, we had a really good team. So in my mind, I was like, this is the recipe for success. This is what a college coach does, is the way that I was taught. So ever since then, it's kind of just been the approach that I took, whether it turns out to be from 30 years from now, whether it's exactly the right thing, it's going to be something that I'll have to adapt to every year. But looking forward into like the head coach thing is something I'm always straight up with you. I try not to get too wrapped up in like going somewhere else. You know what I mean? Like I'd rather just, if that happens one day, great. If it's here, that'd be even better. Like Coach Shep will probably coach until he's 150 years old. He's getting younger. I think he's aging in reverse. So he's someone that I kind of look up to in that aspect of just like he's a humble leader of just men and not just a baseball coach. Like he's doing things that not many head coaches want to do. I know he might not want to do it, but are willing to do. Like he will do anything. He'll sweep the dugout. He'll open the door for morning lift at 5 o'clock in the morning. We do that together. Like stuff that he doesn't have to do, he's still willing to do. So I look at a head coach like that. Like, all right, I'm just going to carry myself like that now without the title. Like I'm the associate head coach. It's kind of like him and I trying to lead this thing together. The other coaches, they have the same exact responsibility for the most part that we all do. Like we all show up to work and we just try and get the guys better and develop relationships and lead from the front. I don't think any of us in the office look at each other like, all right, you're the associate head coach. You're not, we're all just trying to piece it together and try and do our best. And I think that breeds the best culture among the guys too. When they can see that the head coach to all the other assistants, they all kind of carry themselves the same way and speak the same language and do the same stuff. That to me, that's where the guys see it and they're like, all right, this is Seton Hall baseball. So from a future head coach perspective, I have no idea. Like the other thing too, that's probably worth mentioning is like, I do live a great life at home with my kids and my wife. Like I live within reasonable distance of both of our families, all of our cousins, my sister, my parents, her parents. So it's not like there have been professional opportunities that came up the last couple of years and different college opportunities. And it's not all about the title for me. Like I have a lot of school pride. I have a lot of Pirate pride, and I love being here. So it's not like I'm doing this to get to the next level. It's like we need to make Seton Hall baseball a winner, and that's more important to me than like, hey, I'm doing this today. I'm going out to individual work today because I want to be a head coach. That's never the way I look at it. So I guess just being where your feet are and doing things to get the guys better now. And if that comes, it sounds probably cliche, but if that comes to fruition later at some point, yeah, we'll face that when we see it. But from an associate head coach standpoint, like I like to try and take a little bit more off of Coach Shep's plate and try and make his head coach job a little bit easier. He does. I don't know how he does it. Anybody in the program, honestly, anybody in the program would be like, "Does he go home?" Like,
this guy lives here, man.
Where does he live?
Shep sounds like a badass coach to go to war with.
You would love him. Anybody that's we've kind of gone about picking the coaching staff pretty deep. Like we do like our due diligence adding guys to the staff because we feel like this, like especially with Coach Shep at the head of it, like we want the right guys leading it. And he's been awesome, and that's I think you kind of talk around the Northeast region, and that's the consensus is that he's not only a good ball coach but really good person too, a really good leader. So we're all fortunate to be around him.
It's amazing, the professional way of looking at it. I love it, man. I love that. Love the answer right there. So, you're working closely with the hitters. As I alluded to it earlier in the episode, man, I'll see you post some stuff, from practices or swings that day of your hitters squaring up some balls. This is at like 2 or 3 in the morning when you wake up and you start getting after it. You're running a bunch of miles, man. So you're working directly with these hitters. You have direct influence over their success, man. I've seen some of the stuff, read and heard some of the stuff that you're posting about how what you're looking at, what you're trying to teach these guys, what the mentality is at the plate. I love all of it, man. What's like one unconventional or creative approach that you've taken in coaching, in working with these hitters that has led to unexpected success? Right? We see these guys kind of doing weird drills. We see these guys, on Instagram, these hitting gurus teaching stuff a certain way that could be unconventional. You question it. Like maybe what's something that you've done that's been unconventional that made you scratch your head a little bit, but actually worked?
Yeah, there are a couple different things. And I think probably the one that's led to the quickest success for the younger players is throwing them like pretty much right into the fire with the older guys. I think part of my coaching style, like earlier, was like a little bit more like, all right, they're freshmen. This guy's a freshman. Like the past couple of years, you have to kind of like walk them along the process of some things. But when it comes to difficulty in training, we've kind of just like everybody does the same thing for the most part, as far as like difficulty level. The part that's different is it needs to be more of a professional approach when you think of like professional baseball. Each guy has their individual plan. Like it takes looking at each guy's video to learn what kind of guy, what is he rotational? Is he more linear? Is he this? Is he that? And then being able to speak their language. I think that's not that it's unconventional, because that's what you have to do to, I think, be a good coach. But I think it's what separates us sometimes from your average, like, I guess, college coach or college hitting program. Like sometimes you get stuck in those fall days where it's just like everybody is doing the same exact thing and they all get the same language. I think we have more conversations, at least our staff and players do, after we break it up from the dugout. Like after practice, there's like a circle of guys hanging around kind of talking about their swing, their pattern, their routine. Hey, what do you think about? I was thinking this. And I mentioned that the last time that I was on, I think last winter, I think it was last winter, we just talked about like building the culture of the guys. And I think that's the most important piece of it, is that you want a culture of guys that are willing to go the extra mile, willing to turn the machine up when the coaches leave and do the high velocity training or the hard breaking balls or like the mixed BP and the 2 machines and all that stuff. So again, it's not really unconventional because I know other people do it. But I think being consistent in that approach is what's leading to some of the success of like either the newer guys making a jump from their transfer portal school to here, or the high school guys making an impact immediately when they get here. I think that's been the most beneficial thing, is just kind of hitting the ground running and know what you're facing. I think we do a lot of work as far as, like, let's say if you're a transfer portal guy, we do a lot of work on the front end to see what kind of player that you are. And it's the phone calls with other coaches and watching your synergy video and looking at your numbers and seeing, like, where do you fit in our program? And then once you get here in September or the end of August, it's like, what's the plan? How do we get you to do X, Y, and Z? So again, it's not super unconventional. It's not like I had this one guy stand on his head and he was swinging the bat with his feet. You know what I mean? Like, there hasn't been a lot of that, but for me and you, baseball speak, there are some guys that are like super like dip and jack, and there are some guys that are swing on the top of the ball, and there are some guys that are rotate, and there are some guys that are be linear. So being able to just adapt to that has been, I guess, being able to speak that language has been the most important piece of it for us. And like, we talk about that as a staff. We have like kind of like a three-headed group in the office, as far as like the offensive guys, like just talking about, all right, what did you hear Joey talk about today? What did you hear whatever talk about today? Like, what do you think that he's thinking about? And then the other thing too is we have just like a player development plan. That's just an Excel sheet for each guy each week to fill out when it comes to like offense, defense, strength and conditioning, and mental game. We do that. So we get a read on the guys every week and try and figure out what they're thinking and what they're doing. But you got to be, just like we said about the transfer portal, you got to be adaptable to everybody. You might get a really good player who's like got this intricate system that you've never seen or never dealt with, and you just got to be able to hit the ground running. So again, there's no one thing, but it's being able to be a Swiss Army knife is the most important piece, being able to do a bunch of different things.
Yes. Yeah. Versatile, adaptable, the Swiss Army knife analogy. I absolutely love it, man. So this is, again, extremely grateful for your time, everybody. Thank you for tuning in live on YouTube, here on the live stream. Appreciate you guys. So I got one more question for you, talking and hitting on that adaptability, the versatility, going with the flow, improvising, and then obviously overcoming, man. So we've seen a bunch of changes in the landscape of college baseball, making adjustments to the roster size, making adjustments to scholarships, all this stuff. And obviously, like we talked about, coming up and playing baseball or coaching in the Northeast, like, we're up against the same rules as everybody else. Everybody just kind of has different resources, right? So SEC and ACC schools, we saw it in the College World Series. It's primarily made up of, right, the SEC, ACC schools, man. They got some money to spend. I understand, right? They're dominant in baseball, man. If you were given the keys, if you were given unlimited resources and authority, over the Seton Hall program, right? What kind of innovative changes would you bring about? Would you implement in your program, and why?
Yeah, I think I don't know if I didn't know that question exactly was going to have like one specific answer, but as far as just the outlook of players that I've seen from the transfer portal and even the high school kids now, I think proving to them that you can develop somebody and get them closer to their goal or closer to whatever, being the player that they can be, to me, trumps the dollar figure for a lot of guys. Like, I know there was one first round pick last year who transferred, and he turned down a lot of money at one SEC school to go to an ACC school because he felt like, I can make that money back in my signing bonus if this school gets me better. I think they can get me better than this school that's just going to pay me. So, and it's no knock on anybody that can pay guys. Yeah, if my son can make $500,000 playing college baseball while getting a degree and putting himself in a situation to get drafted, it's hard to say no.
You know what I mean? Dude, what?
Like, it's hard to say no. But as far as some of the guys that I've had really deep conversations and some of the good players that we've gotten, it seems like I need to go right now where I can become the best player. That's where our niche has been for the most part. Now, you said given the keys to a program and all the resources, I think there has to be a couple pieces. Like, it's just a recipe. Like you have to be able to offer great facilities. You have to be able to offer a great playing experience as far as like the fans that come to the game. You have to be able to offer the social media aspect. You have to have great coverage. And you have to be able to offer like a lot of pro opportunities that guys are looking at. Sometimes at the highest level, they're looking at dollar amount. They're looking at how does it set me up to get drafted? How does it set me up when I get to pro ball? And then obviously when I'm there, I want the nicest weight room. I want the nicest cages, and we want to play in the nicest stadium. So I think part of it, if I were given the keys to like a type of program that has just access to everything, you have to develop, I guess, you as a coach holistically, what do you think are the top couple things, and then be completely pouring into all of that. Again, I think you and I see eye to eye with that. But if it was my program and I'm looking at it from a student athlete perspective, a lot of them are going to follow what we do. So if we show them that development and becoming a better player, person, man, teammate, student, all of that is at the top of our list, then you get guys that are more bought into that. I think sometimes I've seen it and heard about it a lot recently this summer. Actually, it might be getting deeper and deeper, but it just seems a little, sometimes it's too shallow. The first phone call from like some top tier schools is like, what's it going to cost? Yeah. Which is crazy. Like you call a kid out of the transfer portal, like you're pretty much asking like, what's the going rate for you?
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Sign over here as a free agent.
Yeah. Like what's your signing bonus need to be, which is crazy. So again, I haven't been in that position, so I don't know exactly how I would navigate that, but I do know as a person, you can't lose all your values. Like your values are still doing the things correctly and developing men and players. So I think that would be a huge piece of it for me, is still like proving to the player that if you're competing against if I'm recruiting at the number one school in the country, I'm recruiting against probably the top 5 when I'm recruiting another player. I need to prove to that kid that your parents can trust me with you the best out of anybody else. That's usually it. And your development and your ability to be a pick and the next draft is usually a big piece of that. But I definitely wouldn't get lost in just like, hey, we got to just pay everybody. We got to just do it and hope it works out. Because I don't know. Maybe I think it's karma. I think part of it is doing the right thing and being a good guy and a good coach and a good leader. But that's me.
Yeah,
there's another long-winded answer for you.
That's exactly what I'm looking for, man. I love that. Love the answers. It's I love. Yeah, you could have gone anywhere with that, right? Unlimited resources. What would you change? And the end comment right there is just keep the same character, right? Like that's what it's all about, man. I absolutely love it.
Thank you.
Giuseppe, man, thank you for your time. I appreciate you letting me run you through the gauntlet, all these questions.
It's a pleasure.
Obviously, man, like really looking forward to seeing, call it a bounce back season, call it whatever you want, right? Obviously, like, dude, last year didn't go your way. Looking forward to seeing you guys crush it this year, man. We'll all be following, man, following along. Yeah, wishing you guys the best. Give my best to Shep, man. It's awesome to hear stories about him, man. We'll be watching. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in. Giuseppe, man, thank you for your time.
I appreciate it. You're the man. You're doing a great job.